talk about the upcoming World Cup in Qatar and the hypocrisy of our liberal society and particularly of our liberal media. We all saw in the year past footballers, advertisers and members of the elite take the knee for BLM and talk about the importance of equality and the importance of social justice. We saw footballers virtue signal about how important it was to have inclusivity and diversity. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, these same footballers are about to go to Qatar, a country that built their stadiums on slave labor, a country that has discriminated against the LGBTQ community, against Christians, against Jews, a country that has established itself on injustice. Companies today virtue signal about the importance of defending the LGBTQ community and advertise their wares and celebrate inclusivity and diversity. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to see those same companies go to Qatar and advertise their wares, putting funds into the Qatari government so that they can profit. These footballers, these elites, these companies are nothing but hypocrites that teach you one thing and virtue signal about one thing, but when it comes to them making money, they sell out their own principles so that they can profit from something like the World Cup. Now we know, ladies and gentlemen, that FIFA never should have allowed the World Cup to go to Qatar in the first place. Fancy allowing a country that builds its stadiums with slave labor to host this year's World Cup. This is a problem that we have in our society, is that we are blind to the injustices that exist within the Islamic world, and we are willfully allowing our social elites to be hypocrites. And they represent you when they are hypocrites. The BBC has produced many a programme recently about Qatar and about its human rights record and how slave labour has been used to build those stadiums and how the LGBTQ and the silent P community are discriminated against inside Qatar. But the BBC has been absolutely silent about the persecution of Christians in Qatar. Christians make up 9% of the population of Qatar. That is a greater number than any amount of LGBTQ community. And yet the BBC has not once spoke about the persecution of Christians in Qatar. It has never brought it to your attention that it is illegal to convert to Christianity in Qatar. They have never brought to your attention the fact that Christians who have converted from Islam suffer discrimination in the workplace, discrimination in society and culture. But the practice of the Christian faith is heavily regulated by the state of Qatar. But has the BBC talked to you about that? Have they mentioned that to you? Have the same footballers who have made a show and a dance about how they're going to wear a rainbow armband to stand against discrimination based on sexuality, have any of them mentioned to you how Christians are discriminated against in Qatar. This is a reality that is faced by my brothers and sisters every single day in Qatar. They are discriminated against economically, socially, politically, and culturally. They cannot practice their faith freely. They cannot share their faith. People cannot convert to their faith. Men who are Christians cannot marry Christian women even when they want to. Public displays of Christianity are forbidden in Qatar except in governmentally sanctioned zones. And yet the establishment, footballers, celebrities, politicians and the British media are willfully silent about this persecution of my brothers and sisters. Now why, ladies and gentlemen, are they silent? They are silent because it does not fit the narrative that they wish to brainwash you with. They want to brainwash you into thinking that every religion is kind and noble and good. But 1400 years of experience tells the church that where Sharia law dominates, Christians are persecuted. We are martyred. We are discriminated against. And that doesn't fit the narrative of the liberal elites. And so they ignore the story because they themselves are bigoted against Christians. They talk about Islamophobia to you, and they tell you that Islamophobia is wrong. But when have they ever challenged the Christophobia being faced by Christians in every single Islamic society in the entire world without a single exception? When have you been told about that? When have you been challenged about that? You haven't, and they won't, because the liberal progressive thinks that persecuting Christians is acceptable. Why? Because they conflate racial categories with religious categories. And in their faulty worldview, Christianity is a white man's religion. And so discrimination against a white man's religion is acceptable. But in their ignorance, they think that Islam is a non-white religion. And so, because they stand against racism, they believe they must stand against Islamophobia. You, ladies and gentlemen, must not be hypocrites like your politicians. You must not be hypocrites like the liberal elites. You must not be hypocrites like the liberal media. You must not be hypocrites like those people who are willfully silent about the persecution of Christians in Qatar. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to read to you a report published, ladies and gentlemen, by the International Religious Freedom Society. This is what it says about the situation in Qatar. Let me just find the section for you. Bear with me.
Discrimination is bad. Do you agree?
So, reading from the report, we read the following. The Doha branch of Northwestern University cancelled an event by the pro-LGBTQ rock band Mashura Leila after the booking created controversy in the country. A faculty member at a private graduate school tweeted that criticised Northern Western societies for its sponsorship of the event, stating that the concert crossed a red line for observant Muslims in June. The privately owned newspaper Al Raya published an article by Khalifa Al Mahmoud, later removed from the daily website, which stated that Jews over the course of history had infiltrated international power centres and shaped decision makers, including through the overthrow of the government to serve their own interests. So they buy into an anti-Semitic myth. It goes on to say, in his June 25th column in the online newspaper Al Arab, Abdullah Abd al-Rahman wrote that secularism was to blame for the horrific state of Arab Muslim society, stating, "This is one of the greatest forms of treason against noble Islamic nation, faith and culture. In our Islamic society, secularism represents a position of hostility to Islam and to Muslims." US embassy officials continue to meet with relevant government bodies as with quasi-governmental religious institutions concerning the rights of religious minorities, Sunni-Shia relations and anti-Semitism. Embassy officials maintained a dialogue throughout the year with the Ministry of Education about newly published Islamic study books for public school students in grades 7 through 12, including a discussion during December the 15th visit by the Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism. In March, the US Embassy participated in a religious freedom conference amongst various faiths and academics hosted by the government, funded by Doha International Center for Interfaith Dialogue, which includes embassy-funded guest speakers. Throughout the year, the embassy met with various faith communities, including Hindu, Shia, Muslim, Baha'i, evangelical Christian communities. The Christian Steering Group Committee, CCSC, which oversees a variety of Christian denominations, to discuss issues of mutual concern. Embassy representatives continue to meet with the Ministry of Culture and Sports officials regarding anti-Semitic books being available at the annual Doha International Fair. This country, as well as discriminating against Christians, also participates in anti-Semitism. And yet, our elites are completely silent. They have nothing to say about this matter. It is illegal for a Christian to proselytize their faith in Qatar. Christian worship is restricted. Conversion to Christianity outlawed. So what, as Christians, can we do? These are the things that we can do. If you are a Christian footballer and you're going to Qatar, you need to protest about the persecution of Christians in Qatar. Wear something to symbolize your solidarity with Christians in Qatar. If you are a Christian traveling to the World Cup in Qatar, make sure that you protest for persecuted Christians in Qatar. Make sure that you evangelize in Qatar. We Christians do not need to obey Sharia law when Sharia law forbids us from proselytizing our faith. We should break Sharia law when it commands us not to proselytize our faith. You should challenge the hypocrisy of the BBC and why they are so silent about the persecution of Christians. You should call out the hypocrisy of footballers on their Twitter accounts about why they are silent about the persecution of Christians in Qatar. You should call out the hypocrisy of other celebrities who make a big noise about the LGBTQ silent P community in Qatar, but are silent about the persecution of 10% of the Christian population in Qatar. Ladies and gentlemen, no one will stand up for the church. The only people that will stand up for Christians are other Christians. It is down to us to embody, as Christians, that teaching of the holy epistles, which state that we are a single body, and that when one part of the body suffers, we all should come and stand in unity with the suffering body. That means that the suffering church in Qatar is the cause of Christians across the West. Silence is not an option. Indifference is not an option. Cowardice is not an option. Apathy is not an option. Only activism for the church, by the church, is in keeping with the teaching of the apostles. Any questions?
Any questions?
Any
Islam
questions?
is bad. Do you agree that all discrimination of any religion is bad?
Do I believe that all discrimination of every religion is bad?
Any religion?
No, it depends what that religion teaches. If a religion teaches child sacrifice, then I think we should discriminate against that religion and prevent them from practicing child sacrifice. If a religion teaches
What about
that
son
Christians,
sacrifice?
if a Christian, if a religion teaches, it's all right. He's just not well, JC. He's just not well.
Pardon?
It's just not well. If a religion teaches that Christians should be persecuted, as Islam does, we should resist that religion. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Do you think son...
No, let someone else ask a question. Go on, sir.
Do you believe you need to be born again to be a Christian?
On the topic, any questions on the topic? Any questions on the topic of Qatar and the church in Qatar and the football tournament in Qatar? That is the question.
So do I think I should...
Any questions on the topic? Have you got a question on the topic?
He's got a question.
No. Okay.
Do you think my beliefs as a Muslim
Sorry.
is that I should kill you?
So, ladies and
It's
gentlemen,
not my beliefs according
ladies
to you.
and gentlemen,
Is that my belief?
Islam teaches that Christians should be made second-class citizens in an Islamic state.
Why aren't I?
As
then
Christians,
why aren't I killing
as
you, as
Christians,
Muslim says?
we are called to stand up for justice.
That's right.
That's what we're called to do.
Correcto.
And if we are called to stand up for justice, then that means we are called to oppose any ideology that
you have a
teaches
yes man
injustice.
here, don't you?
Correcto
And
mundo.
since Islam teaches injustice, as Christians, we are called to oppose Islam.
That's right, Tom.
Any other questions on the
Am I
topic?
Question.
trying
Any
to
question?
injustice you?
Any
Am I
questions
trying
on the
to
topic?
kill you
Any question on the topic?
because I think you're a lesser citizen.
Okay.
Am I trying to kill
Ladies
you?
and gentlemen.
No, I am not, because that is not what Islam preaches.
Go on, bro.
So what's your solution for like footballers that actually play?
Okay, so what do I believe should happen about this World Cup?
All right.
Firstly,
All right.
everyone of good conscience should boycott the Qatari World Cup.
Yeah.
Everyone of good conscience should boycott the Qatari World Cup.
Yes.
Those stadiums were built by slaves.
That's right, Tom.
Playing in those stadiums is an affront to the conditions of the slaves that built them. Qatar discriminates against 10% of its own population, the Christian population. And what should happen, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah.
If you are a Christian footballer,
Yeah.
you should boycott and pull out of the tournament.
Yeah.
If you haven't got the balls to do that,
Yeah.
or you need the money because
Yeah.
your family's poor,
Yeah.
then you should at least have the guts to speak up for persecuted Christians in Qatar. Wear the cross in Qatar with pride.
That's right.
If you're a Christian
Yeah.
who's going to Qatar,
All right.
wear the cross publicly. Wear the noon sign, the sign that persecuted Christians in Syria and Iraq owned as their own symbol.
Yes.
And wear it to raise attention about the persecution of Christians.
Right, so.
If you're going to go to Qatar,
All right.
go and meet those Christians.
Yes.
Go and speak to those Christians. Go and support those Christians. Pray for those Christians. And if you're here in the UK,
All right.
challenge the BBC. Challenge those liberal, spineless hypocrites, those footballers and those politicians who talk about Islamophobia but are silent about Christophobia in the Islamic world.
Correct, so.
Any other questions about the topic?
Got a question.
He's got a question.
Is there any room to reconcile Sharia into human rights?
Okay, the question is, and it is relevant to the topic, can Sharia law be reconciled to human rights? No. Why? Because at a fundamental level, human rights works from a Christian principle. The principle of imatio Deo, the image of God, i.e. that every human being is born with an innate equality, an innate dignity that they have just because they are human. No such concept exists in Islam. Your dignity is connected to your beliefs. And if you don't believe in Islam, quite literally, in the Codex of Law of Sharia, you are a lesser human being. It is a lie that the elites teach us that all religions teach the same. That is a lie. Reject it, because ignorant politicians preach it to ignorant people who believe it. Next question on the topic. Next question, going once, going twice, gone.
What's the role of nations in God's plan?
On the topic, sir, the topic about the football tournament in Qatar and the persecution of Christians in Qatar.
What could a government do to help things be less Christian phobic?
Right. So what could our hypocritical, yellow-bellied, spineless, jellyfish society do to help Christians abroad? I'll tell you what they could do. They could start by growing a spine and having the courage to call a spade and to call a bigoted, prejudicial, apartheid system by the names that it deserves. Secondly, they could say to those countries, we will not trade with you. We will not build cultural links with you if you discriminate against the 10% of Christians in your society. The British and Western governments could militarily intervene in countries where Christians are being violently persecuted, like they are in northern Nigeria, in southern Sudan, in Ethiopia, in the Philippines, in Burma, where military juntas and military regimes are waging wars against Christians. You can only help the jihadi when you force them to lay down their arms. And you can only force them to lay down their arms when you kill enough of them to make them realise that military struggle is impossible. Any other question on the topic? Any other question on the topic? On the topic. Sorry?
You said there's a killing of Christians
Yes.
in a particular country.
Yes.
Who you blame?
So, who's to blame for the killing of Christians in places like northern Nigeria and the Philippines and Iraq and Syria and Ethiopia? Islamists are to blame. A group of radicalized Muslims who believe that they should impose Sharia law over you by force at the point of a gun. And our Western governments and our leaders are cowards because they dare not stand up against these terrorist networks, and they dare not speak up for the persecuted Christian. But look at the militant atheists, so hateful of the Christians that they wish to silence anyone who speaks up for persecuted Christians. Any other questions on the topic? On the topic.
I think it's something
Go on.
you've said quite a lot.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about people that are persecuted by Christians?
Okay.
Those that come on persecuted by Christians and churches.
If you want to talk about
You're talking
any
about
God,
Christians.
go to your
So,
house, go to the church.
the question is, what about those who are persecuted by Christians? If Christians are persecuting others, then I condemn it. Why? Because Christianity, as far back as the Old Covenant, teaches equality under the law. However, this is the problem with our liberal society. Because when they are confronted with the persecution of Christians, rather than having the conviction to stand up against that persecution of Christians, what do? They shout you down. They try to change the topic. They try to raise about other issues. Why? Because they have been brainwashed. They have been brainwashed to stand up. They have been brainwashed so that they cannot stand up against the persecution of Christians. They don't have the courage to. They don't have the backbone to. They don't have the balls to. And all they do is rant against the voice of the Christian who stands up for his brother and sister. You, my Christian brothers and sisters, must find your courage. You must find your backbone, and you must stand up against apologists like this and like this who seek to whitewash the persecution of Christians. If you can't stand up to them, they will simply drown out the suffering of our brothers and sisters. Ladies and gentlemen, any other questions on the topic? Don't feed the trolls with your attention. Going once.
It's brainwashing. It's a part of our heritage.
Going twice.
It's the only protocol. And
Sorry?
it's only
Real reason Christians are so persecuted. Are they a
threat?
Yeah. So let's talk about why Christians are being persecuted. They are being persecuted because, boo-hoo, the liberal says. Do you see he exposes himself and his hatred for the church? Churches are being bombed in Pakistan and he says, boo-hoo. Christians are being raped in Nigeria and he says, boo-hoo! Christians are being enslaved in the Sudan, and he says, boo-hoo! Christians are being bombed in Burma, and he says, boo-hoo! This is why Christians are persecuted, because people like him don't believe that Christians are worthy of protection.
Did I say that?
They don't believe that Christians have the same dignity that he wants for himself. And so when he hears about the persecution of Christians, his response that we have on film is to say, boo-hoo! Ladies and gentlemen, those that hate the church are threatened by the message of the church. And what is so threatening about the Christian message? It's because we teach loyalty to our God above the state, loyalty to our God above any ideology, loyal to our God before any political cause. We teach loyalty to one another, and we teach values that contradict capitalism. We teach values that contradict communism, and we teach values that contradict Islam. And because our values contradict these ideologies, Christians are persecuted. Christians, we must defend our church. There is no one coming to help us. We must organize ourselves to train, to unite, to mobilize, and to resist those who persecute the Holy Mother Church. Any other questions?
Would you say a lot of these problems, the conflicts are caused because Christians want to put God first?
Is the conflict because Christians want to put God first? Yes. A Christian is loyal to his own religion. He is steadfast to the teachings of the prophets and the apostles. And the communists don't like it. So that's why they killed 20 million Christians. And the Muslims don't like it. And that's why they've killed tens of millions. And the Nazis don't like it, and that's why they killed tens of thousands of Christians. And the liberals don't like it, and that is why when they hear about persecuted Christians, they try to scrub the whole issue under the carpet. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, one last question.
Money that the government and the FIFA just ignore the fact that Christians are being persecuted?
So why does FIFA ignore the persecution of Christians in Qatar? Speak about the persecution of Christians in Qatar involves a direct criticism of Islam. Islam makes it illegal to be and to practice your faith fully in an Islamic society. And so, if you speak about the persecution of Christians in the Muslim world, you must directly criticize Islam. And our liberal hypocrites, our yellow-bellied leaders, our virtue-signaling, spineless celebrities have turned Islam into a cause de célèbre, a topic beyond reproach, a subject not subject to criticism, and so they are silent about the persecution of Christians in Qatar, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Syria, in Turkey, in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, in Oman, in Yemen, Algeria, Egypt, Tunisia, Albania. Wherever Islam dominates, Christians are persecuted.
Examples of that in Qatar?
Yes. One example from Qatar. It is illegal for a Qatari citizen to convert to Christianity. That is the country where your footballers are going. That's where Starbucks is going to advertise.
Yeah, but
That's where Coca-Cola is going to advertise.
that's not
Ladies and gentlemen,
he wants to convert
we must oppose this kind of law.
prosecution.
And look, ladies and gentlemen, he's seeking to defend it. Make no mistake that this Christopher, who's trying to defend the fact that it is illegal to convert to Christianity in Qatar,
Didn't defend it.
would seek to make it illegal here.
Like not wearing the veil.
And that is why it are silent, ladies and gentlemen.
Are you silent about the veil in France not being allowed?
Answer this question. Do you believe that it is acceptable to make it illegal for a Qatari citizen to become a Christian if they want to?
And he's what?
And he's a Muslim.
So the
Can
Muslim
it-
is being prosecuted.
No,
The
he
Muslim is
wants
being
to
stripped
become
of
a
his
Christian.
Yeah, but the Muslim.
He wants to become a Christian,
he's a
so he is a Christian now. That is illegal in
A
Qatar.
Muslim cannot.
Do you agree with it? Answer the question.
You didn't answer my
Answer the question.
You didn't answer my
Now notice he doesn't want to answer the question. Why? I'll tell you why.
with any reason.
Because he agrees with the law. That's why he can't condemn it. Let's give him another chance. Do you condemn the fact that in Qatar it is illegal for a Christian to be, for a Muslim to become a Christian? Answer the question.
You didn't answer my question.
Do you want to hear him answer the question, ladies and gentlemen?
If you answer my question.
Answer the question.
If you answer my
Answer the question.
Answer my question.
Answer the question. You see, ladies and gentlemen, what you have here is a bigot. What you have here is a Christophobe who wants to see Christians subject to apartheid-like laws where they are second class. And here he is defending it here in Hyde Park, London. Your politicians are blind to people like him. Your celebrities and social elites are blind to people like him. They want to excuse it. They want to justify it. They want to sweep it under the rug. They want to ignore it. They want to whitewash it. They want to change the topic. But you must not allow them to change the topic. You must have the courage and the conviction to stand up against Christophobes like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to move on to another topic.